Welcome to YMI Talking, a podcast where the guests are so good, you'll wonder why the host is even talking. In each episode, you will hear one of the leaders of the Lehigh Valley's vibrant business hub. They will tell you the keys to their success, the mistakes they've made, and what they have in store for the future. Here is the host of YMI Talking, from YMI Insurance, Jimmy Honachik.
I'm the host of the YMI Talking podcast, where we interview local businesses and business owners. Everyone from Nina Reynolds to got Cassie Hilbert coming out for our music fest. Very excited about that one. And so we get lots of great people on and share their story to our audience and get their story out there. We've been doing these for a year and a half with FL&B. Thank you to Andrea for putting these together. It's a lot of work that goes into it. But they are a great opportunity for you guys to learn. I think given the intimate setting today, please jump in with questions. That's what I want to have. That's a little bit of it.
Hi, Jake Sidman. I'm an attorney, shareholder, and chair of the labor employment group at Fitzpatrick Lentz Bubba. I think we did our first one with you. Yeah, maybe a year. I think it was the first one. It was the first one. Yeah,
No, I'm good.
So yeah, happy to be here today, and yeah, happy to field questions.
Hello everyone, I'm Dave Seckel. I'm a shareholder also in Fitzpatrick Lentz Bubba's labor employment group. Also happy to be here. I think we're the originators of this with Jimmy. So good to be back after about a year and a half or so.
Yeah.
And it was fun then, and looking forward to this one as well.
Raymond Lou here. First, I have to give a huge shout out to FL&B. Really the best law firm in the Lehigh Valley, and I'm a lawyer, by the way. It doesn't work. And I appreciate your inviting me to participate in this. I mean, it's pretty awesome, and I'm up here the best of the best. It means a lot. But so I'm an immigration attorney. About a year and a half ago, 2025, I broke off from a bigger firm, took the entire team with me. They're all there, and we've grown. And I do, that corporate employment immigration law, I-9 compliance, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the news, internet, and stuff. So there's a lot that could be answered, hopefully, and I'm available. As I say, 24/7. But again, thanks to FLB. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So hi, my name is Glenn Hendricks. I am the SVP of HR Operations for First Commonwealth Federal Credit Union. I'm not a lawyer, but I was, and hopefully I'm not held against me or. But I've been doing HR, and I appreciate Dave asking me to be part of the panel to kind of probably bring in some more real-world experiences and so forth of what I've experienced over the years. I've been with the credit union for 31 years, and I was just talking about, you don't see that type of longevity with employees anymore. But I've been with the credit union, started as a part-time teller and worked up into HR, was a trainer for a while, then got into the operations side of HR. I've been doing that for probably 26 years or so. So a lot of experiences, obviously, and obviously with the growth that we've had. When I started, 50 employees, we're at about 260 now. 2 locations versus 14 locations. So yeah, it's been quite a ride in those 30 plus years. So again, hopefully I can provide some valuable insight into some of the topics tonight.
Great. Something we've done in the past that has been really helpful is kind of introducing some of you so that we know where you're from and what would be of interest to you. So we'll start over here and have this name.
Yeah, my name is Jake Galander, and I'm with Mid-Atlantic Business Advisory Services, and I work as an M&A advisor. So I'm always coming to stuff like this just to learn for clients, experience I go through, and make connections.
Hello, I'm Danny Great. I'm the founder of In-Person Plus, and we are building the talent infrastructure layer for tomorrow in the world of AI. And so this is my first time here. I was introduced through Robert, the captain, and we are a fully remote-based organization. So some of these topics are very relevant to us. Plus also our main target group is first gens. People are the first in the family to come to the United States or to grow up in the United States. So maybe there's also something there.
Talk for hours.
Yes. I just got a lot of comments.
My name is Steve Warner. I'm from EMI Landscape in Macungie. Kind of similar to your story, I started out at the very bottom. I was a string trade all day, every day, 10 hours. And then throughout the years, I moved up the ranks. And then about 3 years ago, we said we need somebody to keep people up to HR. That's what we're background. And it's been a great journey.
Have you kept them in order? Has he kept them in order though?
I've done my best. So that's my job.
And real quick, do you have 1099 and W-2s?
No, we actually have all of them. So that's something that I'm curious to see. That's the best.
Steph Coble, shareholder with Fitzpatrick Lentz Bubba. About 70% of my practice is real estate and land development, and the other 30% is the transactional side of employment world things.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Hepler. I work for City Center Group. I'm the director of human resources there. I've been there about 4 years. We do real estate development, and we have about 150 or so employees. HR team. So I'm just interested in seeing if you know about clients. Hi, I'm Pam Russo from the Diocese of Allentown. I've been with the Diocese about 23 years. I am the Secretary for Catholic Health, Human Services, and Youth Protection. So I oversee Catholic charities, Holy Family Senior Living, safe environment, youth protection, and really anything compliance related in the DIO.
I'm Josh Haney. I'm an associate at Fitzpatrick Lentz Bubba, and I'm in the employment department alongside Jason Dave, and I'm seeing with my practice.
Hi everyone, Catherine Franz. I'm with Compass Point Consulting. I'm here because my good friend Chris Conway invited me. I recently took over the HR responsibilities for our company, so just looking to learn more. And so
And I am Chris Conway. I'm the Director of HR at Buckner Company. I'm Natalie Sullivan. I am an HR business partner at Air Products. I also wear a volunteer hat where I'm the president of Sherman Lehigh Valley, so very active in the HR community in the Lehigh Valley. I'm always looking for chances to expand my education in HR and look for opportunities like this.
My name is Cassandra Magliani. I am the operations manager with YMI Insurance. So essentially, HR in our office is Jane and myself. But I am also quite new to the HR side and having been for 2 years. I've worn multiple hats in previous employment, so now I'm fully focused on everything insurance in our business side.
Good. Thanks for making sure that actually.
Told us he does that.
I'm Modesty. I also work at YMI Insurance Agency. I am marketing coordinator and director of person. I'm Emily. I also work at YMI. I do the marketing, and I'm also a commercial producer.
All right. So we're going to kick things off. I jotted down a couple of really good buzzwords that we're planning on hitting, so it seems like we're all in the right place with the right things. And Jake, I'll start with you. You're seeing the HR landscape evolve. Different things coming in and out, and a big thing has been talk to me, how you're seeing that become more complicated. What sort of complexities employers are seeing, how they should.
Sure. So we all know before COVID, remote work happened sometimes, some places. That was kind of it. Nobody gave it much thought. COVID happened. Everybody was working fully remote everywhere all the time. And since the pandemic, many employees think that it's still okay and still appropriate, still necessary for employers to permit remote work full time, or something nearly that, right? And I think the practice of most employers has become somewhat hybrid, right? So some employers are more conservative thinking and they want bodies in the building. And then some are fully remote now. We have somebody here, right? The whole company is remote. So whereas pre-pandemic, it was sort of hit or miss as to whether there was remote work. Since the pandemic, it's very varied. Quick war stories these days, and I've been in Dave's office just noodling these things. The law is evolving when it comes to remote work in employment. So yes, during the pandemic, it was strictly necessary, full stop, right? Since that time, in certain situations, remote work can be, for example, necessary in a case where an employee has a disability and can't come to work full time, right? So the remote work might in fact be a reasonable accommodation for a disability, and that's a legal requirement under federal and state law. So those are the complexities we have today regarding remote work that we didn't have before. Then there are ancillary issues. There's wage and hour issues, like how do we know for non-exempt employees when they're working, if they're remote? Do they keep time cards? Do they have to clock in? Data privacy, things like that. Can I monitor what they're doing? To what extent? How often? What can I use that data for? So there's a whole host of legal issues in employment related to remote work today that just didn't exist even 6 years ago, something like that. And the courts are evolving slowly to address these cases and give us more guidance about what employers should and shouldn't do when it comes to remote work.
If I could just add one point on that. Regarding the ADA accommodation for remote work, one thing we're seeing quite often is an abuse of that. If an employee, whatever kind of health condition they have, which falls under the ADA, they're often going to their doctor and wanting to work remotely, and doctors are often signing off on that. So even if it's not, based on its face, entirely justified, there's other accommodations that can be made to have them in the workplace. A lot of employees now are trying to use that, now post-COVID, to stay at home and work. And just something like any law out there. I mean, FMLA, after a while, they're going to find ways to use it.
We try to help those employers deal with those situations. For example, letting them know they're not helpless, right? There are things they do. Yeah, that they have at their disposal as tools in their toolbox, like requiring the employee to bring a doctor's note to justify the request for remote work that seems excessive, right? So, okay, thanks employee, but what we need from you is, and then give them something in writing describing exactly what they need from the doctor, so you can have at least another party's input, and you can evaluate with them what the doctor says, in deciding whether you should or have to provide remote work. But I would say Dave and I have dealt with that more so recently, even in the last year, I would say it's big time.
Is that one of that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, if you're looking for things that are developing as we speak, that's definitely one of them.
If I may here, that is a very serious issue with immigration law because you have employees that are being sponsored by U.S. employers or the H-1B visas, the L visas, the R1 visas, and the like, and they just go and work remotely at in Florida. And the question that we're seeing from Homeland Security is, I think you work from Florida when the company is. And so then, why aren't you working in the country? And that's going to, that really makes it metal lives and it's penalties. It's really, it used to be permitted to someone, but it's actually become a source.
We'll come to you in a second, but I'm going to piggyback off that real quick. Right as I came in before, we had an employee whose life needed to work. He said that he should be there as well as support it. And this was before we started looking into that. And it turned out that we had to file an EPL claim. So there's insurance to protect you when you have these sorts of disputes. But there were ways to address it correctly from the start, but it never got. Glenn, I'd be curious, you're kind of where the rubber meets the road in terms of this. What are you seeing in terms of remote work? And an area that I'm particularly interested in is wage discrepancies. So someone who is in a different place would have a different expectation of wages than people who are.
Sure. And I could touch on everything that everybody else talked about. We have experiences with all those various components. The ADA, the working outside the country, but specifically for wage, we don't, fortunately, even though we are a hybrid situation, so we're in the office 2 days a week and then remote 3 days a week. Not that some employees do work in the office 5 days a week, but we require 2 days a week, with one of those days being a Wednesday. We're fortunate that except for 4 employees, everybody is at least somewhat local. They're more or less in Pennsylvania. They may not be all in the Lehigh Valley area. We have some that are in the Reading area, some up the Lehighton area. Some people live in the Stroudsburg area, some down south towards the Philadelphia area, but we have 4 that are outside of Pennsylvania. We have 1 in Tennessee, 1 in Florida, 1 in Arizona, and 1 in Colorado. We made a decision many years ago when we instituted our current compensation plan, that we would pay whatever the rate was for the Allentown, Lehigh Valley area. That's the rate we're going to pay. And we do that because we expect our employees to be able to work at any one of our locations. We don't, even though you might be hired, for example, our Lehighton location, you may have to work at Allentown. You may have to work in Bethlehem. You may have to work in Reading. So we pay at the Allentown rate. And that holds true for the fully remote employees, the ones that are out of state. We still pay the Pennsylvania, or I should say the Lehigh Valley rate, regardless of state. Now, with that being said, however, our compensation platform does allow us to pull in geographic data from pretty much any area. So I can see not even Allentown, I could pull in Allentown data versus Reading data versus Easton data. So I can actually see what the differences are in rates of pay. So when we do have a situation, when we have a specialized position or more senior position, and we know that we've got to expand our recruitment area, then we can look at, okay, well, if we need to recruit, let's say from the Philadelphia or New York markets, I can see what those pay rates are. So we know kind of what we have to offer to bring somebody in. But we generally base our ranges on the Lehigh Valley area. And we haven't had an issue with that. We haven't for our 4 fully remote employees. We don't have any issues. We haven't had anybody say, oh, I'm underpaid, I'm overpaid. So far, knock on wood, we've been pretty good with that. Well, I should say no one, for the remote employees, no one said that, hey, my standard of living should be 50 cents a dollar or $3 an hour more. We haven't had that come up. But I mean, yes, our employees underpaid. Yeah, they're all underpaid.
So, Dave, I'll turn it over to you. I also wanted to reiterate, as you have questions, please shout them out. There will be a Q&A at the end, but we can make this conversation. But Dave, let's talk about kind of what we were getting at. Talk about people. How important is documentation, policy adherence, and just maintaining that to avoid having to file and or to face a lawsuit?
I mean, policy adherence, having the policy in place, adhering to the policy, and documenting the adherence to the policy is probably the most important aspects of being able to successfully defend employment discrimination. I was in the Federal Settlement Conference a month ago, and it was a joint employer situation. I represented one of the employers, and an incident arose with an employee, and the companies decided to just jettison that employee upon hearing of this alleged altercation without conducting any investigation, without interviewing the employee who was allegedly a problem. There was nothing in his file showing that he had been a problem. On the contrary, everything was glowing in the file. And so they fired him, and he sued for discrimination. And, we ended up, the case settled, but the companies ended up paying at least twice as much as they would have had everything been handled properly. Now, the lawyers were not contacted when the employee was terminated. I found out about the case after a federal complaint had been filed. So, had we been contacted when rubber hit the road, we would have advised them how to proceed properly and not terminate on the spot, at least conduct an investigation and try to find out what really happened. But it just goes to show that and the judge who was presiding over our settlement conference was hyper-focused on the company's lack of adherence to policy, lack of conducting any investigation, lack of any due process by letting the employee speak. And she held it against the companies, and she caused the case to settle for a number that was much more than the companies wanted to settle for. So you cannot overemphasize the importance. And I know employers, it's kind of boring when Jake and I talk to clients, talk about, the employee handbook, creating policies, uniformly applying all the policies to everybody. But, you find out the importance of it when you get sued and you're in state or federal court and you realize that judges and juries expect adherence to policy and not treating somebody disparately, which, can appear to be the case when you don't follow the policy.
I'm going to feel about here because we had an instance where I was ready to pull the trigger and call you, and you talked me off the ledge and said, this is the steps we need to take. And we took the steps, and it was one of the smoothest terminations that we've ever had in the South Valley with staff. So, but truly, without the guidance and following those procedures, it could have gone in a completely different direction.
I can ask on that. So how does that go together with the employment at will and for any and no reason you can terminate someone?
Should have come to our first.
So employment at will is nice in theory, but practically speaking, it doesn't often apply because there's a lot of protected classes out there. Whether it's race, gender, pregnancy, disability, age, if you're a union employee, you can't just be fired at will. And I'm sure Jake gets these calls too. A lot of our clients call and say, wow, I'm going to fire this person. They're at will. It's an at will state in Pennsylvania, right? And the answer is sort of. But for a lot of employees and employers, no, it's not. You can't just, you can do whatever you want as an employer, but do it at your own risk. And if you fire somebody who's in one or more protected classes, again, without adhering to policy, you're probably going to be facing a lawsuit. And if you haven't adhered to policy and you fired someone in a protected class, it's going to be a long and expensive endeavor in litigation.
I think it's one of those basic and misunderstood concepts in the work that we do, because we hear that all the time. Employment at will. So the way I try to describe it is, the law is full of rules and exceptions. Well, at will is a rule. There are so many exceptions. So you can fire someone at any time for any reason without notice, except not because of their race, their religion, national origin, disability, pregnancy, gender. The list is this long, right? So that's the thing. There's a great general rule that only tells part of the story.
And even if we don't do it fine for that reason, perception is
That's where it comes down to.
Yeah, most times people don't get fired for that reason.
Yeah.
But the problem is, it's so easy for employees to get into court, and it was called a prima facie case of discrimination. The bar is very low to get in, and then you have this whole burden shifting situation in court where once they're in and they have the basic elements to present a claim, then the employer has to show that no, it's actually a legitimate, non-discriminatory reason why they fired the employee. And then it shifts back to the employee to show that no, that's actually a pretext for why you really fired me. And however it shakes out, you don't really know until 2 or 3 years down the road. But the reality is most of these cases end up settling, and most employers end up paying a heck of a lot more money than they want to or than they should have.
So I just recently read an article in one of the HR magazines about the fact that there is an increase in workplace harassment suits because of AI. And so now people have the ability to put my boss said, did, whatever into ChatGPT, and then they cite cases and everything else. And that employers are winning, but they are spending a lot of money to defend worthless cases because now the workforce is empowered to generate something. Are you seeing any of that yet? Is that it?
100%. There's a constant surplus of those kinds of cases. Just, ridiculous cases that come through and our employer clients have to deal with. And yeah, they get expensive quickly. There's usually no easy out.
There's no way to protect ourselves.
I'm sorry?
There's no way to protect a company.
The best that you can do is have the policies in place and adhere to those policies so that if and when you are sued, and most companies will be sued, you can successfully and effectively defend against those claims for as little as possible. But it's still expensive. Even if you get these cases thrown out early, which is a challenge because most judges don't like to dismiss employment discrimination, harassment, retaliation cases early because there's inherently a factual dispute in those. The employee says one thing, the employer says another, therefore it's very difficult to get it dismissed. So they're expensive. So what a lot of employers end up doing is trying to settle them early for as little money as possible. But even a terrible case these days, you're looking at a minimum of $20,000 to settle, easily 30, sometimes up in the 40, 50 range. And that's not even including paying us to defend it. That's just paying the settlement amount to go to the employee and their lawyer.
And there are other tools. Like the tools are maybe you consider insurance to defray some of the inherent costs associated with those claims that you can avoid, right? But then, and Dave's talked at length about documentation and policies, but when you have good documentation about your decision-making process, you've insulated yourself from a whole host of claims. You just have. And that's one of the tools in your toolbox, right? So you have these tools and they're all each individually important to continue to reduce the risk of the claims and then increase your chance of winning and getting out more cheaply when those claims get actually filed.
But it does, and this doesn't matter if this is a thing, it's just a reality of it. We had to fight a claim, but I had an employee 6 weeks and through a temp agency, and she filed a claim with the EEOC. And I spent 2 hours on the phone with an attorney, let alone all the documents. So that just costs money, and that would be one. And then back to the point about the insurance company, we had to settle the case because they're like, it's going to be cheaper to settle it.
Well, insurance companies always want to settle.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it could be the worst case in the world. They're like, no, we'll just throw $20,000.
20 grand, that's it.
And I will say, there's one last thing, the AI portion, we've just seen recently, employees now are doing exactly what we said. They plug something in and it gets spit out, and then they take that output and give it to you, the employer, for you to do it. Because we see so much employee writing now that is not their own words, right? We just know it. It's longer, it's better English, it's a little weird somehow, there's all these different things. And that just increases the time and expense of having to deal with whatever that issue is. So AI is helping them, helping in quotes, and causing a lot of grief internally at a lot of companies.
Are you seeing? Sorry, I'm going to get a question here. Are you seeing employers implementing like anti-AI, to do reviews to review or assess whether or not AI? So as we know that we have people submit briefs that are AI briefs. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, are you seeing companies implementing programs like that, or electronic programs where they're kind of trying to test whether or not they're? I want to get it in I've cut off all ChatGPT in my office, and I think that's an interesting. If that's the case, does it even exist?
I can answer this a little bit. Yeah. So there are programs like that. I do a fair amount of higher ed work, and the higher ed institutions are using those programs. Also, I'm getting asked to write AI policies for employers on the responsible use of AI. Certainly, though, another aspect of AI that lawyers think a lot about, I don't necessarily know that employers think enough about it, is when you put something into ChatGPT or an AI platform, it's no longer confidential. Mm-hmm. So if you get a letter from your lawyer and decide to put it in AI to see what AI thinks about it, you've arguably waived your attorney-client privilege by doing so. And so our healthcare clients that put anything in AI have to be concerned about it, potentially from a HIPAA standpoint. Personnel matters, of course, you're concerned about it from a personnel standpoint. But there are some platforms out there to search it. The higher ed folks are doing it because of plagiarism and things like that. So not specifically employment related, but
I mean, question. questions and I would implement it myself, just in case, but questions from others. Sorry, I become.
No, you will jump in. I did want to follow up on employment practices liability insurance. All policies are not created equal, and something that these guys, I'm sure, know firsthand is the right to counsel or choice of counsel. And so some policies will allow you to work with Dave regularly. You can pick Dave for this claim. Some say, no, you're going to our attorneys. And so you've been working with Dave, and now they've pulled away and you have to work with them. So always make sure that you're having a conversation. AI, let's dive in. Oh, go ahead.
On that, with the EPLI, one thing that I kind of fight against is EPLI is a great scapegoat. We can do this because we have that policy. How do you counteract that?
Oh, it's a last resort is how I look at it. These guys are the first line of defense. Policies, policies. But even with those, even if you followed everything to a T, you're going to get those examples. They're filing, they're coming after you regardless. That's when
So you don't want to get those insurance.
I understand that because I've had home run cases and it goes to court and they look at the judge and I'm like, well,
50 grand.
we're going to settle on this one.
all right, so it's hard to avoid a conversation without AI. Hope has been talking about AI. Unfortunately, it's very long.
I'm laughing because it's like we're in church, everybody sits in the back.
Welcome, please.
But it is here, and I think he acknowledges it's here, and it is something that we all have to learn to wrestle with and grapple with and use in the right manner. And Glenn, you're probably closest to this. How are you, the firm, implementing AI? How are you safeguarding to make sure you're using it the best way?
So I believe the original question was about on the recruitment and retention side, or really recruitment and the hiring side. And we are seeing a significant uptick in bots applying. We're seeing a significant uptick in AI generated resumes that are the perfect candidates. And then the manager reviews that. It's like, I've got the perfect person to hire. They do their pre-screen. They have the perfect pre-screen answers. We do the live interview and they have no clue what they're talking about. Well, as I said, so, we're facing with that. Our platform, we're working with our platform. We just rolled out an AI feature that will actually take, we do video pre-screens. So they're recorded from the candidate. They get the questions. They have to answer the questions in the pre-screen. They're all recorded. The AI feature will then take all of their responses and put those, will do a exact text report for us, as well as a summary and a notes report for us of what those responses were. So that will cut down quite a bit on time for the hiring managers to review the pre-screen questions. It doesn't help, again, if you don't actually watch the video, you won't know if the person is really responding. And I have an example of that is we just recently hired an HR assistant. We actually got to expand our HR department. I don't know what happened for that, but we happened to luck out. Yeah. And one of the applicants that we pre-screened, it was so obvious that he was reading from AI. It was like, and when we do more or less competency-based questions, so which a lot of people aren't used to answering, and there would be a pause, and then he'd look up to the side, and then he would read the answer. And you can tell he was reading the answer. So it does take some scrutiny on the hiring manager side to say, hey, I can't just brush through looking at these responses. I need to see what they're actually saying, how they're saying it. Obviously, some people will still get through. We just can't stop that. Our live interviews, again, those are video as well for the most part. We try to be as much technology and the efficiencies as we can using technology. Of course, AI now becomes a big part of that or a problem for that. But we generally do video recorded live interviews. So if the candidate's on one end, we're on the other end. And we just, again, rolling out the AI feature that will now take those responses and give us the text report, the summary report, and the notes report. That will help our managers to not have to worry about taking notes during the interview, and they can focus on the dialogue and focus on that communication with the candidates, which should hopefully also weed out if the person has generated their resume using AI. So we are doing some things with that. And the vendor that we work with is, we asked recently, do you have things in place to weed out what may look like AI generated resumes or bot applications? They don't have it yet, but they're working on it. So that will help us as well to cut down when it comes to the hiring and the talent acquisition side of things using AI. But as a company, I'm not really involved on the IT side of things and what they're doing. I know that it is forefront for us, but I'm not sure, again, as far as what we're doing as a company globally, enterprise wide. I'm not privy what they're actually working on.
But, I mean, that does feel like a use case where it's taking data and consolidating it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, we just rolled out that feature in the platform, and it's nice because when we look at things like we get to the hiring stage or the offer stage, and we look at the rate we want to offer the person. Well, one of the pre-screen questions is, what's your salary expectation? So instead of me not having to go through and find the recorded message, listen to the message, and sometimes it takes the person 45, 50 seconds, an hour and a half to get to their rate that they're looking for, I can just pull up the notes now and I can see it right there. So yes, it does cut down on time, but the biggest thing is going to be, like I said, if you've been in interviews, and I'm imagining most in the room have been in interviews, the big thing is connecting with the candidate. And I'm going to ask you a question. Okay, now don't ignore that awkward silence as I'm taking notes right before I get to the next question. That just interrupts the flow of the interview. So now with this feature, we can focus on connecting with the candidate, keep that flow moving. You can still take some high level notes if you want to. But again, that process will do everything for the hiring managers.
If I may, AI has become a huge tool for the U.S. government in integration in terms of two parts. Employers who are trying to hire employees that are from abroad. There was a time where it was a little bit possible to a legitimate background check for somebody from a certain country. AI has proven in many respects, Facebook, it does provide a lot of information. And I do work with actually a contractor, State Department, that uses AI to define the reasons to deny people the visas. And you amaze the amount of information that it can collect up social media within seconds. Within seconds, that you probably would not want this person in the country. It's there. What you said? I know. Listen, delete social media. Well, actually, you can't even delete it anymore because of way back machines. So you're kind of stuck. But it's being used heavily. Life season here, like U.S. employers are trying to use it, or trying to put it to use in conducting somehow the background checks. You really hire a company in the Philippines or in whatever country, but they would swap by their house and say they're good. And there's a lot of information on that, and it happens quick. It's a huge tool. This Department of Homeland Security, with the State Department, keep a huge tool that's very just.
I can ask, like, with all the efforts to go through a video screen, all the steps, are we not coming to a point where you say, like, well, let's just have people in the room and meet them?
And it's funny you say that, because we actually got away from the video interviews for our financial center staff. For those hires now are done in person at the financial center, because we realized that we want those individuals to see what the layout looks like. If anybody banks with us, I don't know if anybody here does, but we're trying to get more innovative within our financial center processes and so forth. We try to be a little more with the technology that we're using and so forth. And we have what we call universal bankers. So we don't have dedicated tellers or what we call dedicated platform associates. We have one person doing everything. And it's a different setting that most people that are applying for those roles don't quite understand. So we want them now to be in the center. So we have rolled those out to be in person. And we do allow it to other managers as well, but we still record the video, the interviews. It's still recorded in the platform, even if it's in person. So because we still open up our laptops, we log into the video link, so it's still being recorded in the platform, even if it's an in-person, face-to-face.
For approval to do that?
Yes.
You do, I would imagine. A lot of privacy.
Thank you for our next question, Ray.
I'm sorry.
No, that's where I was going.
I'm asking, sorry, yeah.
With all of the AIs on, what legal risks are you seeing as people are usually more?
So again, it's evolving, and there are different aspects to it. So one is some AI products are effectively helping managers and employers make decisions, but there's very little transparency as to what the mechanism is behind the scenes that really results in the decision. So this is just in its infancy, but there are definitely now discrimination claims saying it weeded me out because I'm black, because I'm over 40, because I'm disabled, because of all these things. And sometimes the employers say, but we use this tool, therefore, and we thought the tool was legitimate, we paid a good price, it was an established company and all these things, and that's just not a defense, right? So that's one of the ways AI in decision-making is problematic, right? Also, applicants come in all shapes, sizes, colors, types, and if you have a system that's set up and not set up to address a particular applicant's individual needs as part of even the application or interview process, you're in trouble. You have a problem, right? So you're always going to need a human being involved in those decision-making processes, even with the assistance of AI. AI has its place. Again, I used the word tool earlier, right? AI can be an effective tool. It's not fully fleshed out yet in such a way that you can reliably sort of use it wholesale without a human oversight. It's just not there. So that's one way. There are so many ways. I mean, it's not you could do an entire program just on that anymore. But another way is, we touched on it, right? There's confidentiality. So if you're putting all of the information of the applicant, the employee into an AI tool, where does that information go then? Is it a self-contained tool where you do really maintain all ownership and access to it, or is it more broadly available? We're seeing just now in litigation, and Dave kind of alluded to it, is once you put information into an AI platform, a large language model platform, not only is the information, the questions being asked of AI are discoverable in litigation, right? But also the information spit out to the requesters, it's going to become a bigger and bigger thing. There's so many. Here's what you're seeing now in state, and it's not happening yet in Pennsylvania, but some states now, because of some of the risks associated with AI, have said things like, you can use AI in hiring and applications and employment decisions, but you need to be transparent about how you're using it and provide advance notice to the applicant, right? If you submit this information, it will be processed as part of an AI model, and there are certain risks associated with that. I think Colorado is a state who just enacted a law. I don't know when it's effective, but you're seeing just now the legislative process starting to try to help with some of the inherent risks of AI. But transparency and disclosure is certainly a minimum for our first step. It looks like that the state legislatures are taking to try to address some of these issues. They think it's an issue of fairness, right? Like if I'm an applicant, I'm giving you my information, what are you doing with it? Right? At least tell me up front what you're doing with it.
And if I can jump in there, our IT department recently rolled out a policy of exactly that piece of it is data collection and how long do you keep it, what are you using it for, and how long do you need to keep it, and then get rid of it. So we are looking at that, and it's not AI generated, obviously, but it is a matter of, what data are, and if a vendor is requesting data from us for something, what do you need this data for? And what are you doing with it once we give it to you? How long will you keep it? If we terminate that relationship, that vendor relationship, what are you doing with the data? So we're looking at those things as well, both with what we collect and what we give out.
And honestly, an important consideration is whether the AI information that's being shown is actually accurate. And that could cause, I would imagine, I'm not the employment lawyer here, but I'm sure that could cause.
I'm just not accurate. Yeah. Not well enough refined yet to rely on it.
Try this sometime. I've done it. It's fun. And Each of you has technical information you know to be true and accurate. Ask a question of AI and get an incorrect answer back, and then ask AI why it was incorrect. It's mind-boggling. It will answer you. It'll tell you why. It's never satisfying. But I've done that a number of times. I'll put a legal issue to AI, and it'll spit back an answer that's kind of half right or right most of the time, but not in my situation. And I'll ask it, but you didn't address this. Why is that? And it says, you got me.
Or it's a lot of fun just to ask for them to write your biography and all. That's pretty awesome.
Remove the computer. All right. Dave, let's do a transition a little bit. Non-compete was a big buzzword a year or so ago. Where did the dust settle on that? Where are we with that?
They're not obsolete. They're still used. Speaking of non-healthcare field right now, by employers, they are used. What I'm seeing is, I think employers have realized that they need to be smarter about how they use them. Before, and this is what led to the attempt to ban all non-competes, you have lawn care services trying to slap a non-compete on someone who cut grass, or a bar owner trying to slap a non-compete on a bartender. If they leave, they can't go work in that area for 2 years. I mean, it's ridiculous stuff. So employers have, I think, overall gotten smarter about realizing they have to be only use it when they are trying to protect a legitimate business interest, and make sure that the scope of the non-compete is as narrow as it can be in terms of geographic scope and also time duration. And when employers do that and they use these wisely, they are still generally enforced. That's what I've been finding. It's only when employers overreach that they get shot down, or what's called blue pencil. The judge will scale it down on his or her own to make it legally enforceable. And sometimes you don't even need non-competes. I mean, non-solicitation clauses can be as effective as a non-compete, because one of the biggest concerns for an employer who's losing an employee, a valuable employee, is the fear of them cherry picking or poaching some of your good people when they go out there in the industry to work. So, non-solicitations don't have the same legal scrutiny that non-competes do. You can have a wider scope non-solicitation clause, which largely gets you to the same result that a non-compete would, but you don't have to worry about it being challenged and shot down. So we're seeing a lot of that.
All right, Ray.
Yes.
Let's talk about immigration.
On the TV.
Exactly, and here in Illinois Valley, it's front and center. So what workforce related issues are you seeing?
I mean, I just listening to the businesses and industries that you're in, landscaping, M&A, which involves, the transfer of employees, making sure that the employees are verified, are legally able to work. I mean, I've seen deals, fail because of that. I mean, there was one where I actually had to fire 300 employees that were in the papers. Had security around me, though. But I will tell you, we did train 350 employees to replace them before we had to do the termination. Please, the church. But the Catholic charities, immigration, you are a huge part of immigration, particularly what's happening right now. You're overwhelmed. I couldn't imagine. Bishop says it many times in terms of bringing people from abroad. EB-5 investment visas when it comes to real estate. That's a new boom that's coming in where you have higher. I'm not even skipping over here though. Where you have higher interest rates that today's banks in the U.S. are providing. Then you have these EB-5 investments that get put together in a regional center where you can borrow at 2.5% interest only. Very good conversation to have. Yeah, interest only for 5 years, and then doing balloon payment. And when you're doing that, you're building the buildings. These people are not moving to the area. They just want the green card so their children can go to school there at some point 30 years from now. So it's a good discussion to have. But I feel like every level, every profession, everything that you had mentioned that you do kind of has this like LinkedIn integration, whether it be trying to bring employees from abroad who are of high caliber, or bringing employees from Lehigh University or Lafayette College. It's not Lafayette University. Okay, thank you. I was a Lehigh grad, so yeah. So when it comes to that landscaping, I mean, these are all industries that have long been. And I'm not trying to scare anything like that, because we're in a different position than I can. But like these are all building, developing. These are all industries that. I have 6 nephews, okay, and they're all in their 30s, and they're very lazy, okay. And I'm being very honest with you. They've been given everything. They would not go to a mushroom farm. I mean, they would start before they did that. And we do need good employees, and that doesn't mean, hey, open the borders and let everybody in. We need comprehensive immigration form that lets these employees come in and the like. In terms of the Lehigh Valley, we're actually quite lucky. So when there was, if you recall, there was an incident that occurred in Bethlehem Township, City Bethlehem, where a couple, I'll give you the briefer there. There was somebody that ICE was looking for, somebody that was wanted in a different country. He was a target, had an arrest warrant. That's all they wanted. That's all they went in there, and there were attempts to try to get this guy out. They locked the doors were locked, and then everybody started running. started running there. So that what happened there, those are called collateral arrests. So they got the guy that they wanted. I mean, this guy was wanted for sexual assault in Venezuela. So these aren't smoking. I'm not trying to be. These are some serious offenses there. So then we had all the collateral arrests and the like. After that happened, I have a very good relationship with ICE in Philadelphia. Truly do. I would say I'm on the great side of it. You have to be. And we met. Several of the mayors met. County executives, local leaders met, and we actually met with what's spoken, because I'm not really in that county courthouse. They got kicked out of there, but they were really there. And we met, and we came to a consensus. We're not going to use access to the Lehigh Valley. They wanted access to the prisons. When they say access to the prisons, they're looking for individuals who have no documentation and have committed GUIs. Which is serious. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay it. I get the families and stuff like that, but that's all they really wanted. And when they were able to get access to Lehigh, and again, which they do have, as much as you may think that they don't, access to Lehigh County and the county prisons to pick up people that don't have status, not charged with crimes, whether it be a DUI or the like. That has we kind of have come to a piece. We're not seeing any. We actually have an agreement that there are no workplace raids to happen at that downtown. We have legislators or leaders, however, that are kind of poking Sleeping Bear, and calling attention to it. But after that incident that happened down there, I mean, several of us stepped up, actually called the meeting. We met with the director of URO. The Valentine Day was a big deal there, because they're students. I mean, they're terrified, and the school districts, were terrified, and they made it very clear: we were not going to school district. We were not going to the Catholic schools. We're not. I mean, that's Fox. These are the news stations talking, and even in Minneapolis, I mean, it was really they just wanted to get to the prisons. Once that happened, everything stopped. So I feel, absent something happening that could poke that air at ICE, we in the Lehigh Valley, we are in a good position. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't prepare for something that might happen. But preparing doesn't mean locking down your entire building and not letting anybody in or out. It's just standard operating procedures. I mean, you have I-9 documents. You're not a document expert, all right? Don't need verify, please. It's not mandatory, don't do it. You have I-9 documents, you're not a document expert, right? If it looks reasonable, it looks real to the person, it attaches to them, you're not gonna get fined for that. There's mitigating factors that can come in. So it's not the way, quite honestly, it's not the way that we portrayed by media. And the way, when you look at the media, they're going to the most extreme places where they need dozens of police officers to ensure the safety of the public and of those around it. So, honestly, there is urgency. And I don't know what our president will wake up and think tomorrow or say. And I'm not getting into politics or anything like that, but they're very tough on immigration. In a way, rightfully so. We had a border that was open that let in 30 million people. And they were just walking up and saying hello, and they let them in, and we really didn't have any idea. Because they were put by the FBI, and they were never in the United States, and there's no record of them. So that's kind of the issue here. We're calm here, and then I'm really on top of that with them. Down there, I meet with them once a week. So if you ever have any issues, honestly, please.
Great question.
I actually do a lot of work.
I know you do. Thank you. You've been great to work with the diocese. We're looking at Catholic charities. What is your stance on the E-Verify? You say
I am so against E-Verify.
Really? Can you tell me why?
I just, all right. Your health your health's like reasonable person standard. So like when I look at a green card, all right, I can clearly just look at this. This somebody made this, right? But like so it comes off, but like you're not a document expert, and you're only going to be held to that standard. So you're not going to be, when they say they do a quote unquote audit, they don't run into your building and say, give me all your I-9s. I'll say when to arrest somebody that they really need, but there's SOPs that we can create for those who come in the side room. I can do it for guys. I just feel like if E-Verify would solve the entire immigration problem if they made it mandatory for every employer. So because then every employer would have to use E-Verify and nobody would be verified, and we'd lose a lot of employees there. I just believe the legal minimum standard is what your eyes says. You're not a document expert, and they will not hold you to that. They will not hold you to that. But say an audit does happen, they come in, they drop off the form, call, boom, to the diocese, and
we're not using it yet.
I would not. I would strongly.
I'm glad I asked.
Unless you're using government, if you have government contracts. Some government contracts require E-Verify use and stuff like that. But when it's like some other entities, you can. I'm not saying you can get away with hiring people that may be undocumented. I'm just saying that just kind of keep it to the reasonable standard.
And we do get some cases that we're not sure, or I deal with a lot of background checks, so I'll see even volunteers who've been in removal proceedings for years. It's like, well, can they?
What do you have? You have a document though.
Yes. So, but everyone we have to scrutinize and make sure we give an independent evaluation of that person.
No, reasonable persons. You can don't ever over scrutinize any document, because when you do that, you are treating that person differently than you are another person who's applying for the job. Don't ever double verify. Don't ever tell someone give you something else. You're going to treat them the way everybody else is to be treated, and you will not face any repercussions from ice in that first place. What they're looking for are those companies that have been called 30 times. That's not fair.
With the E-Verify something that we find out.
Yeah, so E-Verify. So in 1988, Ronald Reagan brought about immigration reform, where there was going to be amnesty, and they were supposed to secure the borders and all that good stuff. But he gave amnesty to everyone first, and they secured the borders, and everybody just came back in again. But a part of that was implementing an electronic system of some sort that employers could voluntarily enroll in to use that links to INS back then, Department of Homeland Security, to confirm if that person who filled out the I-9 form is actually legally able to work in the United States. And if that's the case, they do the I-9, put all the information in it, and what may have looked completely okay to you could potentially come back as if this person isn't eligible to work. So to me, there's, and this is, I guess, you can kind of your first, second, and third time. There's it's all about remediation after something happens, but it's the reasonable person standard, and that's specifically been told. You know, we've met. I actually helped draft the new I-9 form. So yeah, pretty. It's so confusing. But it was for the reason to try to make it as easy as possible. One thing, just always use the newest I-9. But I can do a whole course on I-9 forms. Just questions about visas and stuff, and there's a global workforce too, by the way. And I think a lot of employers are afraid to access that global workforce because of fears of audit, but that shouldn't be an impediment. I mean, there is a global workforce out there. I mean, whether it's bringing nurses over very quickly, there is a global workforce out there that I think the United States has to open itself up to.
All right.
Because of my nephews.
I know nothing gets a room going in politics.
I'm sorry, I'm not talking about politics.
We're going to keep going. We're going to keep going.
I always miss the politics.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
DEI was a big buzzword and it got hacksaw recently. Where do we stand with DEI? From a corporate side, where are you thinking?
So it's funny you bring that up because we just had new employee onboarding yesterday, and one of the things I talk about is our DE&I policy. And I make it clear to our employees that, our DE&I policy is not what you hear on the news today. You hear about DE&I from politicians, DE&I hires. I said, you were hired because you're the best qualified. That's why you're in this room right now. That's a separate sort of transaction, if you want to call it that. Our DE&I policy is, okay, now you're an employee of ours. How are you going to be treated? What is our culture around the diversity of our employees? What is our culture around making sure that we include all of our employees, making sure that our employees are treated equitably? So again, it's not, we don't focus as like DE&I hires. It's more of what is the culture to make sure that our employees feel welcomed, our employees feel as though they're part of the team. And as I explained to our new employees, and we have our demographics, we are probably about 30, I would say roughly about 30% Hispanic. The other maybe 60% white, and then black, and then the other categories. As I tell our new hires is that we have 100,000 plus members within the credit union. Those members are not all middle-aged white men. Those members come from all categories. We talked about it earlier: the race, the religion, the national origin, the gender, the sexual identity, sexual orientation, marital status, political affiliation. Our members encompass all of that. Our employees should as well. And the only way we can be successful as an organization is by embracing the differences that our employees bring into the workplace. And as I explained to our new hires, is that if you have a consumer need, well, I don't care, you're buying a car, you're buying a refrigerator, you're looking for financial services, where will you feel the most comfortable looking for that consumer need? Where you see people that act, look, talk like you do. I'm not saying the entire organization, but you will see somebody there that you kind of identify with. And that's how we should be approaching our D&I as well, is that our employee demographics should closely match what our members' demographics look like. Because that's the best way we can be successful as an organization and continue to grow. So that's our approach with DE&I.
I do our rapid fire question.
Okay.
We're after everybody.
Yeah.
You I have room for one more question from the audience. If you need to, or just encourage it as a networking time in the lobby.
Okay, all right. Then let's get rapid fire. You guys ready?
Are we wrapping? Say we're wrapping, or?
If employers conduct one legal compliance review in the next 90 days, what would you put as top their checklist?
I think it's really going to depend on the employer and the industry. So in hospitality, for example, I would do wage and hour compliance. So make sure you're tipping people out the way you're supposed to. There are restrictions on that. There's overtime calculations related to payment of bonuses, all sorts of stuff. So it really depends, I think, in large part what industry you're in, and frankly, what you're certainly if you've been handling claims, those are probably the areas you need to start with. Oh, we don't have policies, we now know, applicable to, and we've said this a couple times saying there's a reason for that. There's been an uptick in reasonable accommodation requests from employees. Have written policies. Make sure you have designated people in-house who know what to do with the requests when they're submitted. And let the managers know, don't deal with those requests yourselves. Get it to this central location so it can be handled appropriately. I'd say those two things, being super practical about what's hot right now, what we're spending a lot of time on, those are the 2 years now.
Great. David, what would you say?
First thing went to my mind was wage and hour compliance. Also, W-2 versus 1099. We get a lot of that. Just had one today where a client was looking to bring somebody on as a 1099 independent contractor. But when I went through the list with them of all of the different criteria or all the factors with that person's quote-unquote employment, it was clearly going to be an employee, a W-2 employee, not a 1099 contractor. And, the Department of Labor is on the lookout for this, because as a contractor, you don't get all the benefits that employees do. And it's a lot less expensive for an employer to use independent contractors and much easier to get rid of them as well. So they like to go that route, but it's, the guidelines are pretty clear that the Department of Labor really errs on the side of considering people employees and not contractors. And we find ourselves advising employees that it makes sense to follow that guidance and comply with the DOL regulations are.
I mean, to me, don't go home and start, doing I-9 audits and stuff like that. Seriously, it'll be okay. Just have standard operating procedures in place. And when I say that, very basic. Like if somebody comes to want somebody, you bring the ICE off. I'll email you all copies of them. You put the ICE officer in the side room. It's important that you have those procedures in place so that you're not taken by shock if something does happen. And they're very straightforward. They're not out to shut businesses down. They're really not. They're just trying to get some people that have issues, and we have to comply. We do have to comply to a certain respect. So I do have SOPs I'll forward to you as you guys can play around. Yeah.
All right, Glenn.
So pretty much the same as I mentioned before. It's FMLA and ADA. We moved back from being fully remote. Like I said earlier, I can talk about that. Probably do an entire session just on that. We went from being fully remote March 31st of last year to the hybrid on April 1st of last year. And employees were not happy about that. So we've seen an increase in FMLA requests. We've seen an increase in ADA requests because employees do not want to come into the office. So it's a matter of balancing out. I just happened to have a meeting with a manager today who an employee has FMLA for her parents, and the manager made an accommodation to let the employee work fully remote. And I said, FMLA has nothing to do with remote work. It has to do with the absences from work. You can't put the two together. If the employee has an accommodation request, they go through the proper ADA process. So it's making sure that managers understand those differences. And as mentioned, everything should be coming through me because I'm the SME when it comes to FMLA and ADA. Well, I'm the organization's SME. I go to my attorney friends as the true SMEs. But everything should be coming through me for review. And this is a case where the manager didn't come to me for review and it created a problem. And now the employee's in a very sensitive situation with her mother. So now we got to balance out, how do we address the consistency of allowing employees to work fully remote even on a temporary basis, versus now the employees needs to care for her soon to probably be passing mother. And it's now created an issue for us. So again, I think compliance-wise, it's those two. It's the FMLA and ADA.
Well, thank you for all of your contributions, all of you. I will open it up to questions until Andrea tells me to shut down. Does anybody have any questions? All right, let's get food and drinks. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry for the food and drink.
I already had a bite.
For the 1099 and W2. So clearly, if someone is like full-time contractor and full-time as a W2, it's kind of like about the role. But how does that work when someone occasionally works for you as a 1099, or does 7 hours a week, let's say, as a 1099?
There's a whole list of factors which go into it, but the main focus is the degree of control exercised by the company over the employee or contractor. You know, is the employee or contractor on site? Do they have set hours? Do they have their own tools? Do they have an office? Do they have equipment provided by the company? You know, there's literally a long list of factors that go into it, and no one factor is dispositive. So it's all a case-by-case basis. You just have to analyze it as a whole, and come to determinations of what we believe, how we believe the Department of Labor would look at that person. You're a 1099 or a
The plainest English I've been able to explain it is the closer a worker looks like a plumber who comes to your house to fix a leaky sink, or a painter comes to paint the bedrooms, the more confident you can be that they are an independent contractor, right, as opposed to an employee. Why? Because a plumber comes to your house and all you notice you have a leaky sink. And you say, I need that fixed. And the plumber says, okie dokie. And then he hands you a bill when it's fixed. You don't control the tools he uses. You don't tell him how long he has to do it. You don't pay for his insurance. You're not really paying him by the hour. You're just paying him to get the job done. So the more it looks like that, the more confident you can be that they're an independent contractor.
You have just clarified and made the whole idea of independent contractor and W-2 the easiest way. Without a doubt, I'm telling you.
So just on the tool side, because like we require people to use our environment, confidentiality, security, all these reasons. For the rest, they can use whatever computer,
there's legitimate
whatever
reasons.
they want. Yeah, that's all different.
Yeah, there are, like I said, no one factor is dispositive, and sometimes, even though one of the factors might go on to the side of the W-2 employee, there's a legitimate reason why the company is requiring that. But that doesn't mean that everything's gonna fall on that side. Jake was rattling off a whole list of things. Another one is paying the person. Do you pay them like you pay like payroll for your employee every 2 weeks, or do you pay them, only when the project is completed? That's another huge factor in terms of whether someone's a 1099 or a W-2.
Great. Thank you again as a panel. Thank you for coming out.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the YMI Talking podcast. If you enjoyed this and want to hear more content from amazing personalities in the Valley, please subscribe, leave a rating, and drop us a quick review.